Hey everybody, welcome to the Kickstarter preview for Dicetopia. And so you can see this is the prototype box. All of the pieces will probably come in a box about this size, maybe a little bit bigger for the main board. And here are the rules. It's all the rules in the game are on this two-sided card. And what the game is, it's a dice game, it's a filler game, and it's set in kind of a theme of dystopian cyberpunk future, and players have their own little player boards, different special player abilities, and then you're manipulating dice off of a main board. So to try to sum up the game before I show you the mechanics is difficult, but in some senses it reminds me of Alien Frontiers. You've got dice manipulation, kind of a worker placement sort of thing, but then you've also got a little bit of a cosmic encounter vibe, not in the negotiation aspect, but in the different sort of player powers, and you've got some hidden hands of cards which are actually end-game bonus scoring, similar to like Ticket to Ride, where you have some points that you're going to score at the end of the game for fulfilling different objectives and things. And then you've got your points that you're going to get from acquiring different dice with different values on them. And so again, it's set in a very futuristic sort of world, and there's some real interesting interactions, and like I said, the core rules super simple, but a lot of the dynamics and things are going to come out of some different special abilities, and also there's some different kind of scenarios that are just kind of like tweaks on the system. So you got a simple core, lots of special powers and things happening, and that's kind of the cosmic encounter side, but it's very much kind of a Euro-y, filler-y, worker placement, Alien Frontiers kind of thing. So let's jump into the how to play, and then I'll give you some more of my thoughts at the end. Okay, so as with all Kickstarter preview videos, these are definitely prototype components. Some of the art is final or near final. If we take a look here, you can see these two cards are player faction cards, and the yellow player has their translucent cubes on there, and the red player has their translucent cubes. You can see there's 6 slots for each cube. And there's a whole variety of different special factions and things that you can do. They have a nice turn breakdown, or sort of the 6 possible actions that you can do, and these correspond to the 6 action spaces. So you can see there's a row of dice here, here, and so these give you a little brief summary of what those actions actually do. And then there's a little special ability that particular faction gets, and most of the time it's kind of a once per game type of thing. You can use that ability once. Now the reason that is because there's only 6 turns in a game. You can see everybody has 6 cubes. Your turn is very simply taking a cube and replacing it with one of the dice on the locations, and then taking the action associated with that location. The game does play 2 to 4 players in this particular prototype. I've got yellow, red, blue, and maybe you can't see the black tokens there. And then each player is going to take a token and put it on this little score track, and then at the end of the game you're going to add up your score. And as I said previously, the rule set is very simple to start the game. So what's the first thing you're going to do on setup? Well, first thing you're going to do is you're going to roll a bunch of dice and randomly put them out. It doesn't matter what color the dice color is actually important. Now you can see there are certain spaces here. This says 3 and then 4. You won't use these right 2 spaces on each of the different action spots unless you're playing with 3 or 4 players. And you also, of course, remove dice, and you will remove the colors evenly. So you're going to remove a certain amount of clear dice and blue dice and purple dice based on the number of players, and then we'll have a distribution of dice out here, and these are rolled randomly at the start of the game. The next thing you're going to do is distribute these emission cards. Now to start the game, at least for your first play, you're going to deal out 3 to each player, and then you're going to choose 2 to keep, and then discard 1 of those out of the game. Now you also be able to get more missions later on during the game possibly, and these are going to give you just a variety of different bonus points. Let's take a look at a couple here. So this one is 4 victory points for each teal die left on the city card. This is the city card here. So you want teal dice actually on that card. And this one is 4 victory points for each purple dice on the city card. Well, now we've got this one here is 8 VP for 3 dice of the same value, and this is going to be on your particular player faction card. And this one here is called the Big Heist. 25 victory points if you have dice of value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is one way that you're going to score points. As you're taking dice and taking actions out here, moving the dice over to your special ability card, you're going to get points based on the environment, however things are set up. And you're also going to get points equal to the pips on the dice themselves. As I mentioned before, there are also scenario cards, and these are sort of like an optional advanced rule kind of thing, but these do actually change up the gameplay in interesting ways. And I would say play the game a few times without them first, kind of get the feel for the game, and then you can start throwing these in, and it really kind of mixes things up. You can see this one, actually, the new Observatory Bank, is sort of an augmentation of this particular action spot there, which does some interesting things, sort of changing the value of the different colors and adjusting the values of those colors. Now, before we talk about what the actions you're going to take are, there is actually one way that you will score points in addition to the mission cards and actually having the total pip values on your player sheet. If you have the majority of cubes, let's say, just for an example, I had 3 of these yellow cubes here, and I've got the majority here of area control on this particular action area, I'll actually get 5 victory points plus the value of the remaining dice. And that's a kind of an interesting dichotomy versus getting larger dice on your sheet versus leaving them hopefully for yourself on the location that you're trying to get the majority of. So let's take a look at the possible actions that you can do. And again, on your turn, you just take one of your cubes off of your player board and replace it with a die here, and you'll take this die, and then this die will then move over to your player board over there. So this first spot, if I did that action here, then I'm going to actually draw a new mission card and then discard one out of my hand, but I can replace one if it doesn't look like it's going to score me very many points. Now this next spot here, let's say red comes in on a turn, they can take that, and then if they do this, you can see this is re-roll a die on any spot anywhere. So you can take a die on the city board, on your player sheet, or on another player's player sheet and try to re-roll that, make it lesser or greater, and just kind of see what happens there. If you go down here, and we can take a look at the waste management space, and this is, you can take an agent, and that's what these cubes are called, they're called agents, on an action space, so any agents that are out here on the board, and then swap that with a die on another action space. So I could go here and then let's say swap this guy down here with this spot over there, like so. And so now I've kind of started to get a little bit more of a majority here. Or you could switch somebody else's. Now similar here is Twilight Congress, is you can swap dice on action spaces. So if I went here, let's say the red player goes here, he takes this spot, and then he wants to swap out a die. He wants to get rid of this lower 2, and so he can move this 6 over here like that. And so now he's got a higher potential for scoring points if he gets the area majority on that spot. So you can swap 2 dice there. Now similar, if I go here, I can take and I can swap a die on an action space with a die on one of these cards here. And again, that can be anybody's faction card. And finally, this last spot here is actually swapping dice on the faction card themselves. So I could go here and take that spot, and then let's say if I moved over here and I really wanted to, I don't know, get a 3, I was trying to get a run or something, and I didn't really want these teal dice on here per se, and so I could swap those 2. And that's simply the game. There's just 6 rounds of doing that, taking a cube, putting on here, taking the die, doing whatever the action involved with that particular spot was, and then totaling your points. Players will reveal their mission cards, get points for that, total up all the pips on their faction card, get those points, and then we'll look at the area majority here. Again, you get 5 points for having the majority, plus all of the points from the pips left over on that spot. If you're tied for area majority here, you'll split the points and then round it up and add it to each player's score. But the game's really going to sort of come down to trying to figure out what types of missions people have, because you can see there's not a ton of variety really. I mean, there's a lot of variety, I should say, but you can kind of guess at the type. So 10 points if you have the most white dice, 3 points for each of your dice with a value of 5, 20 points if you have all dice of the same value, and then we saw the other one where you had like a straight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So based on the dice selection that they're choosing, and are they choosing all the same color, all the same number, you know, different patterns, you start to know what the mission cards are, then you can be a little bit more aggressive and attacking in some ways, at least trying to, and then dealing with that, and then you're kind of balancing that whole sort of deduction, hidden secret objective idea with your straight points here, as well as the area majority there, and sort of swapping dice around and swapping the action cubes around. And then on top of that, you've got these interesting scenarios, and you got the different special abilities and things. For example, this one here allows you to copy a die at the end of the game from some other players. This guy actually lets you keep all 3 mission cards, and then at the end you have to decide which 2 you're going to use, which just gives you some flexibility. This one here is stop 1 dice from being re-rolled or switched from a normal action, not another player's ability, once per game. So if somebody does this little re-roll thing on you and they're going to re-roll one of your dice, you can say, okay, I'm going to stop that, or they're going to re-roll their own dice, you can stop that. This one is once per game, perform an action of your choice instead of the action of the location. So I can take a die here, but maybe perform the action from the observatory bank, and so on. And there's a mess of these, but this gives you some interesting variety. And like I said, it's a real simple core, but that has just some variability and some metagaming sort of winded around all of that. Okay, so that is Dicetopia. And just to be kind of forthcoming about everything, I did spend a lot of time also play testing this game, providing a lot of feedback to the designer, and so it's a game that I really enjoy, honestly, and really interested to see where this goes and if it gets made and all that kind of good stuff. So definitely a game I support, and I do recommend people take a look at it. It's a very quick filler game. You can definitely play this in less than 30 minutes, even with 4 players. So you can play a couple of games in kind of a lunch hour type of atmosphere. And it's very quick and very interesting, and it takes a couple of plays kind of to get into the metagame as you learn those mission cards. So a big part of the game is deducing what style of dice. It's almost like poker hands in a way, or each player kind of has 2 poker hands that they can possibly go for, or try to hit both of them if they get some good synergies, or draw extra mission cards to sort of better synergize. But then you're kind of balancing that with, again, the area control, just taking the big numbers to get points on your own board, and that kind of stuff. And then you kind of throw on top of it, again, the player abilities, the different scenarios, which can do all kinds of wacky, crazy things, which just really changes up the metagame and lets players kind of tinker around a very super simple game of just, I'm going to take this dice and do this action, and that's all you really do. But there is some different kind of cool flexibility that can happen with that. So that is basically the game in a nutshell. A good quick filler, and with lots of variability, and you can play it. And then the game is one of those sort of kind of like a game grenade, where you pull the pin and you got to wait a little bit, then it's going to go off, and then you really get into the game. And if you play it with sort of a dedicated group of players, you'll get into the meta and get into the deduction and get into all those aspects, and then kind of tinker around the edges with all the different player abilities. So that is Dicetopia. Definitely take a look at it on Kickstarter. Thanks.